We're looking at two use cases on AI. One in P2P, where obviously we don't want to pay late, but neither do we want to pay early. And hence, using machine learning to see a pattern on where there is likelihood of paying early, and just doing it on one country gives me between $20 to $30 million of cash.
Welcome to the GBS Masterminds podcast, the one and only platform for global business service leaders to share their experiences of building world-class shared service organizations. My name is 𝗔𝗯cie 𝗦𝗲, founder and CEO of Harmonize, and I'll be your host. Today, I'm honored to host Natarajan Gopalan, a GBS leader with 20 plus years of experience in leading global business services and finance operations across companies like Unilever, Philip Morris. Currently, Natarajan serves as the global head of integrated business services at Philip Morris International. Natarajan, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, 𝗔𝗯cie.
Natarajan, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your career journey?
Well, as you said, I have served a long time with Unilever, in fact, 20 plus years. I can't remember, in fact, how many years. I started way back in India. Then I served in Singapore for a long time, 10 years, in fact. A very difficult place to leave. It's a very nice place. And then I moved to London, where I spent almost half a decade. All of my stint with Unilever in Singapore and in the UK were spent on very transformative tasks and operations. In one of them, I set up commodity hedging for the first time for Unilever, dealing in almost $5 billion of commodities. In the UK, I really worked on the GBS for the first time, in fact, and helped transform the GBS operations to make it more customer and consumer centric and very transparent. But yes, that was a long stint. And then I joined Philip Morris a couple of years ago, and it's been an absolutely amazing ride for the last 2 years with them in redefining the vision for GBS at Philip Morris.
Tell us a little bit about your personal side, some of your hobbies.
So I would call out two things. I love music. I'm a classical musician myself, a vocalist, and I have given concerts, and I still do give concerts. In fact, I do what we call in Indian word, riyas, which is practice of classical music every morning for half an hour. And that is how I start the day. So music is one of my passions. And the other passion, in fact, of late is studying comparative religions. And in the last 1 year, thanks to COVID, I have actually spent a lot of time reading through a lot of these books, and I have formed my own hypothesis on the most important question that we all face, right? Why are we here? Where are we going? And I intend writing a book at some stage on this very fascinating topic.
Exciting. Looking forward to the book. We're going to play a small bit of Natarajan's own creation.
Vinayaka Namosude, Vinayaka Namosude, Vinayaka Namosude, Vinashakam Shri Vinayaka Namosude, Vinashakam Shri Vinayaka.
Natarajan, at this point, I'm going to switch into the $6 million questions that every GBS leader is debating in the world today. Let me start with the first one. The first one is captive center or outsourcing. You have managed extremely wide geographies, customer footprints across 30 plus countries. In your view, which model is better for deploying shared services?
Thanks, 𝗔𝗯cie. This is one of the most important questions that all GBS leaders face. And let me start with the bottom line. I believe in a hybrid model. Why do I believe in that? And by hybrid, I mean a combination of captive and outsourced partners. There are two reasons. I firmly believe that our captive organization should be doing what we are best at doing, which is connecting internally with the business and helping them transform. And we should let our partners do what they do for a living, day in and day out. And the beauty of a hybrid ecosystem is you're able to leverage the collective capabilities of multiple partners. And that's how you build a state-of-the-art GBS organization.
Absolutely. The next question is harmonize and standardize first or lift and shift first? I think there is a very common debate, as you know, Natarajan, among shared service leaders. What is the right strategy to transition work? What's your take? Would you rather do lift and shift first, or would you rather standardize the process and then lift and shift?
Again, it's as you say, $1 million question. And I would say there is no one size fits all approach. And in my view, while the ideal thing is everyone says we have to standardize first and then give it to someone else, I think ultimately it's a trade-off between speed, cost, and focus. Speed, therefore, means let's not waste too much time trying to standardize everything. Standardize to a certain extent and then start transforming as you lift and shift. Cost. At a certain point of the standardization curve, you will have more cost trying to do it yourself than letting someone else do it. So again, it favors you doing it as soon as you can. And finally, focus. What do I want to focus on? I would rather bring in a partner and let them worry about the next waves of transformation while I focus on what matters most, which is to help the business transform itself.
Very interesting. So it's almost like what is your focus areas of strength, and then the rest, you can probably do it in a speedy manner because there are a lot of partners out there who have been there, done that.
Indeed.
All right. $1 million question number 3 is robotic process automation versus foundational platforms. Today, many GBS leaders that I've interacted with struggle with scaling the quantity of RPA bots beyond a certain stage. I kind of always hear this pattern. It's kind of great, but it's kind of hitting I'm just curious, what has been your experience? What is your recommendation on using RPA? And then if you can throw in some light on AI and how you're thinking about AI.
Again, great question. And I would say that digital is probably one of the most used and abused words in organizations. And I think the right trinity to focus on is data, process, and automation. The three have to come together. And by that, I mean, ultimately, you have to redesign or reimagine processes in a way that you embed digital in that process redesign itself. So what I mean by that is don't have a process and then try to force fit an automation into it like a lot of organizations do, and it leads in redundant bots and redundant costs, and that doesn't help anyone. In fact, you put an automation on an inefficient process, you amplify the inefficiencies. You do not get efficiency. Hence, redesign the process with digital in the design thinking upfront. Then you reimagine in a very different way. You would sort of scrap everything that is happening today and say, look, if it was digitally embedded, how would it work? Take a blank sheet of paper and draw it. Data is absolutely important because you need harmonized data that can talk end to end in the enterprise. At the moment on AI, again, AI will depend a lot on data harmonization. Otherwise, you operate on inefficient data structures, you get inefficient outcomes. We're looking at 2 use cases on AI. One in P2P, where obviously we don't want to pay late, but neither do we want to pay early. And hence, using machine learning to see a pattern on where there is likelihood of paying early and just doing it on one country gives me between $20 to $30 million of cash. So huge potential there. Another example is in the financial reporting. The biggest nightmare for any accountant is, do I have a risk in my balance sheet? Any red flag? Now, can you embed machine learning into the transaction posting itself in the general ledger so that you can detect the patterns on where there is a likely risk emerging and then focus only on those transactions rather than trying to boil the ocean? So there are interesting uses of AI. My own belief is you should define the end outcome before you apply AI. AI for the sake of AI is absolutely not useful at all.
Interesting. So yeah, on the RPA front, I think we use a terminology called you don't want to just automate as is. Some use cases, it might make sense, but a lot of times to truly bring transformation, you need to go to a new to-be state, which might not look like an as is at all. So good thinking in terms of how do you think about RPA and what are the right applications out there. Thanks for that. All right. Next one is cost cutting to revenue driver. What do you think is the future of GBS? One of the things that always comes up is how GBS can be a revenue driver instead of traditional cost-cutting unit. I know that obviously all the GBS leaders want to do both, but in real world also, a lot of GBS units are mostly tasked with labor cost arbitrage, those type of things. What do you think is the evolution? What is more practical to expect?
Look, ultimately, it depends upon the DNA of the organization. And historically, GBS has always driven cost efficiencies. But increasingly, organizations are shifting their focus. My own personal belief is we have to be revenue focused more and more in the future. Why? Because cost efficiencies from GBS is a no-brainer. It will happen. The industry has evolved so much, you don't need to come and say, hey, I'm going to deliver cost efficiencies through GBS. That is your job. Hence, the real value, and therefore I would say in the case of GBS, don't talk about cost efficiencies, talk about value creation. And value creation has got three legs to it. Cost efficiency is the bottom of the pyramid. I won't even talk about it. The real pieces that we need to focus on is revenue enablement. And the second is quality of business. How do you make business more and more simple and easy to do for the internal customers? That is where the real value is. And hence, in the future GBS, I see three layers. Bottom layer is the typical GBS scale and standard processes, do it efficiently and so on, do it in-house or do it through your partners, doesn't matter. The second layer is the co-pilot, where you work with the business to help them transform, to collectively and collaboratively define new outcomes for the business on revenue and so on. And the third layer, for me is the most interesting one, because it's a layer that no one has imagined yet. And what I mean by that is in 5 years' time or in 3 years' time, 30% of the jobs in any industry, and for that matter in GBS, do not exist today. Can you define what those new trends are and start bringing those skill sets in? I was reading recently an HBR article where it says, hire for potential, not for experience, because you need a different mindset for the future. Hence, in my own vision at Philip Morris, we are driving a lot of focus around revenue enablement, cost efficiencies being taken for granted. They will and ought to happen.
Interesting. All right. Next question is core ERP versus modern SaaS or software as a service platforms. What is your view, Natarajan, on the trade-off between ERP solutions like SAP, Oracle, almost every company, Fortune 1000 company out there has one, versus the modern niche platforms, Coupa, Blackline, HighRadius? There are so many tech companies, AI capabilities, and so forth. How do you think about the trade-offs and what bets you want to make?
Again, I think on this, I've had a lot of experience, particularly with SAP as an all-in-all platform. They always like to believe that they can do everything, but at the end of the day, I think the future of technology is built again on three layers. Layer one is the SAP or Oracle, whatever you choose, and you work with that with some additional bolt-ons like central finance module and so on. Then the second layer is the kind of solutions that you mentioned about Coupa, Blackline, and all of us are employing many of these platforms. But I see a third layer where you have an ecosystem of apps that are emerging. And that's where you need startups to come in and start building on your ecosystem. We need to have an open ecosystem where we offer our basic backbone, but then have the ability to build on an ecosystem of apps that can leverage onto the backbone and start doing some innovative stuff, whether it is AI or predictive modeling and so on. So I see ultimately it might sound fragmented, but it is not fragmented. I would call it the ecosystem of apps. And at the center, you have the backbone, which could be either an SAP or an Oracle.
That's very interesting, Natarajan. So that makes so much sense, because I think the bottommost layer being the SAP or Oracle platform, and then there are mature software providers like HighRadius. But I think the startups on top is a very interesting thought for big Fortune 1000 companies, because even though they're small, they bring some strong innovation. They're hungry. So if you can figure out a way to plug them, it's an amazing way to extend your innovation ecosystem. So thanks for that.
If I could build on that, that's where probably you're going to get your 10x, because SAP can give you 1.2x, and the next layer can give you 2x. But the next level, third layer of apps, is that probably you start reimagining different outcomes and start looking at 5x and 10x factor in terms of your business outcomes.
Absolutely. All right, Natarajan, on a closing note, what would you like to leave your listeners with some parting advice?
I would say three things. I would encourage everyone to set for yourself a very ambitious North Star and keep redefining that North Star every now and then, because the world is dynamic. The world around you is changing. So what you thought is North Star a year ago is no longer the North Star. You need to keep that alive. That is what will keep the culture of innovation and bring a sense of discomfort that I need to go there. I'm here. And that is very important. Second is we need a high-performing organization. Ultimately, whatever we do, at the heart of it is our people. You need diverse people. You need to empower them. You need to have gender diversity. You need to have all kinds of diversity, empower them, encourage them to make mistakes. Because I read an interesting anecdote recently on one of the social media platforms. When you lose, you learn. So don't worry, you learn. And when you win, be humble. Go on to the next one. That should be the mindset of the organization. And finally, have fun. Take life easy. It's not worth getting too stressed about everything. Have fun. And one of the quotes that I really personally love is, do the right thing. When faced with the trade-off between the pleasant and the right, which one will you choose? I will choose the right. That might be more difficult, but it will always eventually get you to the right place.
Very nice advice. In fact, I'm going to have this borrow from you this evening for my kids. Have fun in what you do. Don't take it too stressful. Thank you for that. Natarajan, this has been a very insightful conversation. It was a delight to have you on the GBS Masterminds today. Thank you for joining us on this episode of GBS Masterminds. For more episodes and information, visit gbsmasterminds.com and stay tuned for the next Mastermind.
That was the GBS Masterminds podcast. For more information, visit gbsmasterminds.com and make sure to search for GBS Masterminds in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And on behalf of the team here at High Radius, thanks for listening.